Well, welcome. This is our next attorney lecture series. And today we've got Lisa Gonzalez with us, who's a criminal defense attorney here in Fort Bend County, where, as she told me yesterday, she's been practicing for 12 years. And she has earned her American Chemical Society Forensic Lawyer Scientist designation, as recognized by the Chemistry and the Law Division of the ACS, which is the highest form of scientific recognition available for lawyers. She is also a graduate of Gary Spence's Trial Lawyers College in DuBois. Is that correct?
Yeah, DuBois. We're in Texas. It doesn't matter.
Wyoming. Okay. She is also an annual speaker for the Texas Criminal Defense Lawyers Association, where she's currently serving as a board member. She is also going to be the 2021 president of the Fort Bend County Bar Association. And she is still a board member of the Fort Bend County Criminal Defense Bar. She is also a member of the State Bar of Texas District 5 Grievance Committee, a member of the State Bar College of Texas, and the Harris County Criminal Defense Lawyers and the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers. So thank you very much for joining us, and I will turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Guys, I am so happy to be here. So DWIs, I love them. I geek out on them. So I am happy to be here. I will warn you that this topic is so passionate. This is a passion project of mine. So if I get too geeky, just raise your hand in the little reactions if you're watching this live and tell me you don't care, because I do. I tend to get way deep into the weeds and people tell me like, hey, I don't need to know all this. I am going to keep this kind of very general, like you would come into my office and what would you want to know? So we're going to kind of keep it very like, what are all the questions people have when they call, or when somebody comes in and they say, hey, I have all of these, I have a friend who has a DWI. Please tell me what I need to know. So you're basically getting my consult for free. Or what I would tell, so this is, you're getting all these things. What I would tell somebody who says, hey, I have a friend who got a DWI, or what I would tell a college student who's heading off to college about a DWI, or any professional person, because I think those are kind of major different categories. And then just for everyday people who this is not going to affect our professional career or other things like that, you know, what we need to know about DWIs. So I think the first thing we need to talk about is, what is a DWI? So you've all seen the different ad campaigns, right? Drink, drive, go to jail. And so the question is that true? A lot of prosecutors would argue that, yeah, that's the law. That's not the law. You can go to Olive Garden and have a glass of wine. You can go to any local restaurant. Well, okay, so we're in COVID-19 right now, so you have to, exceptions can be made, but you can go to places and have a drink and get in your car and drive home, or drive to a friend's house or whatever. Totally legal. The law is actually driving while intoxicated. Intoxicated is a legal word. Okay, so you've heard people say, oh, that person at the bar who's stumbling, they're intoxicated. Legally speaking, that it has a very precise definition. I think commonly we would say they're drunk, but in a court of law, intoxication has a very precise terminology. And that means they have the loss of the normal use of their mental or physical faculties, or a blood alcohol content above a 0.08, or a combination of alcohol and other intoxicant. We will get to all of this a little bit later on, because yeah, it doesn't just have to be alcohol. It can be something else. You can have alcohol and caffeine. You can have alcohol and cocaine. You can have alcohol and THC. It's a whole combination of whatever it is that you want to do. And the state has to prove it. If they're going to plead it, they have to prove it. But see, I'm getting into the weeds. We got to keep it. I got to slow down. So intoxication, right? Driving while intoxicated. So what is driving, right? So you think driving means driving in a car behind a wheel, like operating a motor vehicle, right? No, I mean, yes, you're right. That's what driving means. But case law also, I'm sorry, I see myself over here in this little thing. I need to hide my view. I'm going to hide myself. Sorry. Hide. Now I can look at Andrew. Okay. So, hi, Andrew. So driving doesn't actually mean driving like in your car. Crazy. Okay. So certain disclaimers that I should tell you before I get into all my things. Take a deep breath with me. Everything you know about the law is about to change. Mind blown, emojis all over the place. Okay, so yeah, you're going to have, so stop right now, get a pen and a paper because you're going to have questions. So just go do it right now. I'm going to give you like 3 seconds. Okay, good. Benicia's showing me she's got her little pen and paper. Great. So here's the thing. Driving is not actually driving. You can be in a parked vehicle on the side of the road. Like, okay, so let's say you went to Olive Garden and you had your glass of wine and you're like, okay, that was a bad call. I should not be driving. And so you pull over on the side of the road because you are a responsible driver, right? And your car is running and it's wintertime and it's cold. And so you have the car on because your heater's on. And so your lights are on, your heater's on, but you're not moving forward. Okay. Your car is in park. Okay. Are you driving your car? Okay. So go down to your little, so let me see. So like raise your hand in your little screens if you think you're driving. Okay. I'm looking. Some of you, I can't see your screens. Okay. So go to your reactions and like do a little do-daughter if you think you're driving. Okay. Yeah. You're driving. Your car is engaged. Your car is on. You're behind the driver's seat, right? Absolutely. You are driving that vehicle. I know. For those of y'all who like haven't studied law or don't know case law, you're like, but the car's not moving. I know, but the case law says that you are driving that vehicle. That vehicle is operating. So even though you are on the side of the road, you are operating that vehicle. So an officer can come by and he can give you all the field sobriety tests and he can say that you are under the influence of alcohol if he feels you have failed all of his tests. Okay. So that is how crazy our laws, I shouldn't say crazy. That is what the law in the state of Texas is. Now, my opinion as a defense attorney is it's crazy because it's not what you would think of as driving a car. Okay. So other things of intoxicated, right? So you've got these very loose definitions of loss of normal use of your mental or physical faculties. It doesn't have to be both of them, right? They're harder to prove for the state of Texas, but they do exist. So what does that look like? So the officer is going to be the one who's writing these things down. He's going to say like weaving in lanes, right? So you've always seen officers say like, oh, I saw the car weaving about the road. Okay. You have to weave, you have to cross the line to be weaving. Now, I know this is kind of terrifying for all of us who are driving down the road and are super safe drivers, but you have to cross the line. Think about it. We all have cell phones. We all have other modes of distractions in our vehicles, right? We're changing the radio station. We're trying to pick up the pen that fell. We're trying to pick up sunglasses. There's other things that can distract us. So the law says you can weave within your own lane of traffic, okay? In order to be weaving outside, like once you cross a line, whether it be, so, my dad says the mustard and the mayonnaise, so once you cross one of those lines is when you are considered officially to be weaving for an officer to have suspicion enough to pull you over. Okay. You have broken a traffic law to where he can pull you over. Now he can pull you over prior to that, to, as community supervision and safety, right? To see, hey, are you having a medical episode? Okay. It is for investigative purposes only. He's not doing anything else other than to see, hey, are you having some sort of trouble? Do I need to get you to a hospital? Right? Okay. So this is where we're also going to talk, and we're going to get back to like care, community care and supervision in a second. Okay. Other reasons, like just kind of traffic, general reasons that an officer can kind of, well, we'll get to traffic stops in a second. So we're still talking generally about DWIs. Okay. Because we want to know first, what is a DWI, right? And then like, how do we not get stopped by an officer, right? Let's go from how do we just avoid this altogether, right? Okay. Typical reasons an officer even starts a DWI investigation is because it starts with a traffic offense. So we just talked about one. We talked about weaving out of your lane, okay, for whatever reason, mustard or mayonnaise, okay? Obviously, a very dangerous one would be driving the wrong way in traffic. So now there are a lot of reasons you could drive the wrong way in traffic, which I know sounds crazy, but if you are in a city that you are unfamiliar with, so during the holidays, you could be visiting somebody or somebody could be visiting you. And because there are one-way streets and either they don't know where they are going or they haven't been given proper instruction, they can inadvertently drive the wrong way down a one-way street. Okay. That is an indication of, to an officer who is investigating for DWI purposes, of loss of mental faculties. Okay. Now, how does a traffic violation like that turn into a DWI investigation? He's going to take other factors into account. Are you driving the wrong way in traffic during lunchtime? During the day, it's daylight hours, or is this between the hours of midnight and 4 a.m.? So officers kind of know that between midnight and 4 a.m. is typically when bars closed. Right now, during a world pandemic, it's kind of a free-for-all. So if you're driving the wrong way down any street during a pandemic, yeah, it might be a DWI investigation because, all of these studies are saying that people are day drinking all the time because they have nothing else to do, just being honest. So just be careful with wrong way driving and properly instruct people who are visiting you about one-way traffic. Okay, driving the wrong way. Failure to stop and yield to traffic or running red lights. Okay, these are common things. Traffic violations that will immediately lead to a potential DWI interaction. Failure to maintain a proper vehicle include the following: broken tail light, broken light on your license plate. Not having both license plates is also a big one. So this is one that I personally have a big problem with because older cars have both license plates. Newer cars do not. And I know that people are going to be like, well, how does she know that? Okay. When you go to Costco or Sam's, whichever big lot store, or Christmas shopping or whatever you're doing, just take a look in the parking lot and look at the cars that have two license plates, like a front and a rear one. And I don't care where it is. I don't care if it's in the window. I don't care if it's sideways on the back of the tailgate. I don't care where it is. But just look at the cars that have two license plates versus the cars that only have one. Typically, the cars that only have one license plate will have it in the rear. Okay, they will not have a front one. And the reason is because the manufacturers of BMW, Tesla, and the super fancy cars don't like to ruin the front aesthetic line of their super fancy car. So take what you will with that, but most times the cars that are getting pulled over are not getting pulled over for one license plate, are not these super fancy cars, okay? They're going to be the cars that have both license plates, or they're going to be an older model car, and the older model car is going to be quote unquote suspicious for other reasons. And the officer is just going to put in his report, oh, they only had one license plate. But we all know that the reason the officer is pulling them over is because they're in a less than reputable neighborhood, but the officer can't put that in his report because then he'll sound racist. He can't put that he's profiling because then he'll sound racist. He can't put all the other things that he is suspicious of because he'll sound racist. So he just puts that they only had one license plate. Okay. These are all things that are absolutely true, that in all the years of practicing law, many criminal defense attorneys know for a fact. And officers, they have to protect themselves too. I'm not saying officers are bad people. I'm just saying that I understand the nature of their job. They have to keep and protect their job too, and to protect the public. And part of that means, like, yes, their radar is up. They know something is going wrong, but they can't put in their report, hey, I feel like there's something up with this car, and all my gut instinct is telling me I need to pull this over, but I can't legally, I cannot interact with them. So, but I know something is going on. And so here's the deal with criminal defense, right? We as citizens, we want to be protected. We want crimes to be prevented. But there's also the laws, right? The Constitution says you cannot interact with me unless an officer unless he has a reason to, right? So we're going to get into some other super duper mind-blowing things that I'm going to tell you that officers do to get to reasonable suspicion. And that's why I told you to grab your pen and paper earlier, because you're going to want to write these down, or when they come up, I know you're going to start typing in the chat and have all these questions. So they're coming up. I'm telling you, it's going to be when we start talking about searches of cars. So just hang on, it's coming. But my point is just that officers will sometimes do what they feel is necessary, or say what they feel is necessary to do their job. That's when your defense attorney steps in and says, hey, there is no articulable reason for this officer to be having this interaction. Okay. What other basis did they have? Right. And then you have to look at other things that happen afterwards. So we've talked about license plates. We've talked about weaving. We've talked about broken taillights. Car accidents. Okay, so if you get in a car accident, like a fender bender, or what we call a one-car accident, like you hit a curb, you fell into a ditch, you hit a tree, you did these other things. Those are all traffic accidents, okay? Officers can interact, and that can easily turn into a DWI investigation. Okay, so how am I doing on time? What time is it? Okay, oh my gosh, time's going by so fast, Andrew. Okay, so here's the deal about traffic that I need to kind of get to super fast. In most cases, an officer cannot arrest you for a traffic offense. Let me repeat that. You, on most scenarios, should not be getting arrested for a traffic offense. Okay? Do I need to stop talking and we need to switch, Andrew? Oh, I can keep going. Okay, you give me a flags up if I need to stop. Okay.
You've still got like almost 10 minutes on this one.
Okay, good. You give me a little hands up. Okay, so yeah, not to bring up, horrible things that have happened in life, but like, yeah, interactions that have gone horribly wrong in the state of Texas have happened from traffic accidents from traffic stops that have gone bad. Okay. An officer for a traffic stop should not be asking you to exit your vehicle. Okay. He should be coming up to your window, asking you to roll it down, asking for your license and registration, and giving you a citation. That is how that should go. Okay. But here are the rules for interacting with officers. Okay. You are always polite. Okay. Even if the officer is the meanest jerk on the face of the planet. Okay. You are always polite. Here's the other things you need to know. If the interaction turns into a DWI investigation, The officer is going to say things and potentially threaten you and say like, if you don't do this, if you don't blow, which is true. So there are certain things that we're going to talk about later. If you don't comply with certain things that they are requesting of you, yes, your license is going to be taken away and they are going to take you to jail. That is absolutely going to happen. But you know what isn't going to happen? Additional evidence against you. Okay? So here's my deal. Go to jail very compliantly because you are like, I just saved myself all that evidence that isn't against me. So we are happy. We are happy. You have protected your constitutional rights and you have helped your defense attorney. Okay? Now, is the officer going to be happy with you? Probably not, but you are very polite about it. So my dad always told me, look, if you call me and you say you're in jail, my reaction will always be, good job, you did the right thing. So moms and dads watching this video, okay, if your kid calls and said, I got arrested for DWI, your immediate question is, did you refuse all the tests? If they say yes, you say, good job, you did it right. Okay, we'll get back to this later on. But the answers are, you should not be getting arrested as a result of a traffic investigation. Okay, let's talk a little bit about how we go from traffic to DWI investigation. So when you roll down your window, license and registration, right? Okay, so that's when the DWI investigation starts. It actually starts with how you pull over and are you doing everything right? Is your car in park? You know, the officer, he is observing you from that moment. He's also observing you if you're on a long, dark road to see like how quickly, how smoothly you pull over. You know, how are you rolling down your window? How are you getting if you're a woman, how are you getting your stuff out of your purse? Is it taking you? Are you moving quickly? Are you moving slowly? All of these things, you're already being tested by the officer. He is already observing you. It has begun. So when you're pulling your stuff out and you're handing it to him and you're looking up, okay, he's not looking for your cards. He's looking at your eyeballs, right? This is where he's looking, and he is looking, how does this person's eyes look? Are their pupils dilated? You know, are their eyes bloodshot? He's looking at your overall disposition. Are they sweaty? Do they look nervous? All of the things they are looking at for you in that one moment that they are asking license and registration, okay? And they're also talking to you, right? Because as you've learned, driving is a divided attention test, which you're going to hear a lot about. And so they want to distract you. They want to see, can you hand me your things and talk to me at the same time? What were you doing this evening? Where were you going? They're going to ask you lots of compound questions to see, can you keep up? They're also shining their big light into your car, not so they can help you get your stuff. They're looking in your car to see, do you have beer cans or bottles? Or do you have, paraphernalia? Or do you have pills? Or do you have other things that are all around your car that give them probable cause to now take a traffic investigation and turn it into a DWI investigation, okay? Because alcohol, pills, marijuana, anything is going to take this from a traffic interaction into a different type of interaction, okay? So same thing if you're in a car accident, right? Car accidents are a little bit different because we have to find out, well, were you having a medical episode? Because you could be having a medical episode, right? You could be having a seizure or a heart attack. You could have sneezed, and that's why you crashed into the person in front of you, right? Not everything has to be nefarious, but officers don't know. And so they have to go in there and they have to do their investigation. It's just, again, based on time of the incident, they will presuppose certain facts, okay? So you have already started this investigation with your officer about how you are getting your stuff out, right? How you're getting your license and registration, and you are talking with them. The most common answer officers receive when they say, what have you done today? Have you been hanging out with friends? Did you go to the bar? Yes. Did you have anything to drink? Yes. What did you have to drink? A few beers. How many beers? 2. The next common answer, 3. These are the most common answers people give. Why? Because we don't keep track, right? And so people kind of default to what their most common thing is, right? So what is most common? Most common is at the end of every day or on an average day, we go home, right? And we have a drink or 2, right? Or every Friday night you meet with friends and you have dinner and you have a drink or 2. Why? Because the average bottle of wine has a couple of drinks if you're sharing it with friends, right? If you have a 6-pack and you go over to a buddy's house, you have a couple of beers, he has a couple of beers, and you're left with a few beers left over, right? And you split them or you take them home or whatever, right? So the average is around 2 or 3 beers, right? The problem is some people that's true. Other people, it's not. It's just the default answer. So officers kind of just shrug it off. I will tell you that really good officers will say, do you have receipts from the bar? Okay. Here's the issue with receipts. If you've been drinking a lot, the answer is no, I don't have receipts. Okay. Because here's why. If I go out drinking with my girlfriends, right? And let's say there's 5 of us. Okay. If I'm a good friend, I buy a round, right? And that's on my bill. How many drinks does that show that I paid for? Or does it look like I drank because it's not going to say Lisa drank 5 drinks. It's not going to say what time I drank them or who drank them or who I gave them to. It's going to show Lisa went to Sam's boat and drank 5 drinks on Friday night. It's not going to say when I drank them, or even worse, it's going to say Lisa drank 5 shots of tequila. And it's not going to say when I drank them or who I drank them with or anything. And that is evidence that will be used against me in a court. Okay. So you just keep that in your little purse or in your little wallet and you just keep your mouth shut. Okay. Here's the other thing about, and we'll get to this later, about being in the back of a police car. I have a very good friend of mine who is also an attorney who had an outstanding traffic ticket in a very small town in Texas. And unfortunately, he was picked up for it. Okay, so he actually sat in the back of a patrol car, and he is a former prosecutor. And he said, he was a defense attorney at the time. And he said it was the most interesting feeling. He says, because you feel like you need to explain to the officer how you're not a bad person. Okay. He goes, and I know as a defense attorney, I know you're supposed to keep your mouth shut. I know that everything I say is going to be used against me. It's recorded. It's all of these things. He goes, but it's so hard because you want to tell that officer, this isn't me. Like, this is just a misunderstanding. You don't understand. And he says, and having that experience, like, I feel like we need to tell our clients. We need to tell our clients, like, we know you want to explain and you want to say, look, my house is just up the street. Can you let me go? Or I have to get to my kids' soccer practice. Or look, this is just a really bad day. It is the 1-year anniversary of my father's death, and I just went out and I just needed a break and I needed to deal and I shouldn't have gotten in my car. Like, yes, those are all, I'm not going to say good reasons, but they're human reasons that we understand why you're in the situation. But at the end of the day, the officer is not going to care. The officer has a job to do, and the officer's job is to enforce the laws of the state of Texas. Okay. It is the defense attorney's job to help advocate for you on those reasons why you were doing whatever it is you were doing. Okay. My argument would be, okay, now I am not your attorney, right? So you're watching this and this is just my opinion. My opinion is also, if you are watching this, you probably should go talk to an attorney. You probably need to go hire one. And they may disagree with what I'm saying. They may be like, no, we're not listening to what Lisa said. we're going to do my case. We're going to represent you my way, because not everything that I am saying is going to apply to your specific case. This is a general consultation about DWIs, okay? But generally speaking, like, the less you say, the more your rights are preserved. The more your defense attorney, whenever you walk into their office, they have to work with, because you go in and you say, look, this is what happened to me. This is why I got pulled over. This is what I did and did and didn't do. And Andrew's trying to hold up what are you saying? Oh, we got to switch. I'm on pause. We're going to switch to the other Zoom. I'll continue in a second.
Let's keep going.
Okay, sorry. So I was on a little bit of a rant. But my main point is you want to give your attorney the cleanest plate possible, right? You want to give them everything to work with, and so you want to protect as many of your constitutional rights as possible, which basically means you want to go in and say, look, I got pulled over. I did everything that I have checked out online and that I know of. So I didn't do the field sobriety tests. I refused, for them to take my blood. I made them get a warrant or whatever it was that they did or didn't do. I tried to I didn't say anything in the car. I kept my mouth shut. I didn't do an interview with the officers, so that in all of those situations, you're giving the attorney the blank slate. And then you walk into your attorney's office and you tell them, look, this is the real story. This is what happened. This is how my day started. This is what happened when I was drinking or not drinking. And then this is how I ended up here. Please help me. Okay. That is the gift you could give your defense attorney, because you are giving them the most beautiful case to work with. Okay. So yes, so I'm advising you, but I don't know the particulars of your case. So I don't know. Now, I've had clients come in my office who don't do any of these things, right? They did the field sobriety tests. They, confess, I had 6 shots of tequila. And then I got in my car because it's just down the road. And I knew that it wouldn't hit me till I got home. These are things. And you're like, well, I appreciate your honesty, but we got to work on that. And so they're different parameters. And yes, it's not that you did anything bad by being honest or being truthful with the officer. It's just that I have to be able to explain that. I have to be able to negotiate those boulders that are in my way now. I don't have a clear path. So it's fine. It just makes my job a little bit harder. And typically harder in defense attorney speak means more expensive to you. So just so you know. Okay, so license and registration. At some point, the officer is going to say, hey, I smell alcohol on your breath, or I see you've been drinking, or I smell marijuana, or all of the things. And he's going to ask you to exit your vehicle, okay? And ask you to do the field sobriety testing. He may just say, oh, I see you have a cold beer can in your car. And we're going to talk about, we're going to talk about what the officer says to get to the search of your vehicle. But I want to kind of focus on, the field sobriety testing and the blood testing first, and then we'll kind of go backwards to the search of your car in a second. So at some point, you've all seen them, like they get you out of the car and they never really ask, hey, do you want to do these tests? I would like to give these tests to you. Are you okay with that? No, that never happens, right? They're like, please step out of your car and walk this way with me behind your car and in front of my patrol car where I have the camera. And you do, because they're the one with the guns, right? Like, never forget that. Never forget that the officers are the ones with the guns. And so you do, so you're compliant, right? And then they're like, okay, I want you to stand this way. And they never ask, right? And so you're And they do this, the test has already begun. The moment, I mean, like we talked about, the test is taught when you're getting your stuff out, it's already begun. But like they're watching you, how you open the door. They're watching if you stumble out of the car. They're watching, are you walking fast? Are you walking slow? And of course, the women are always like, oh, well, it's the heels, right? Okay, so then the officers have learned to call your bluff on that, ladies, and say, oh, well, if you feel comfortable, take your shoes off. Okay, and so the young girls are like, oh, great. So they do. Okay, ladies who are like under 30, don't take your shoes off on the side of the road, on a freeway or on a, why? Okay, because that's where the nails and the glass and who knows what else are, right? Not to mention if you're like on a side road in Needville, like snakes and spite, like, no, keep your shoes on. I don't care how hard it is to walk in your 6-inch stiletto, like, no, just keep them on and let your defense attorney talk about how like, oh, well, have you tried walking in like 6-inch, like, yeah, just leave your shoes on. Okay, sorry, I preach a little too. So they go and they're gonna do the test with the light, with the pen, right? Follow my pen, okay, right? In 12 years of experience, right? I have only seen one officer do this correctly, okay? One. And unfortunately, for all the lawyers who are watching, that's the one officer who, when he went for his recertification exam, because officers have to get recertified every so often, he was intoxicated and he got fired. I don't know if y'all remember this. I don't want to say his name because I know this is like on like the YouTubes and the whatevers, but y'all know where to find me. I'm Legally Lisa. So if you're watching this and you want to know, just call me. Like, I mean, it's out there. You can Google it, you know, Texas DPS officer who got fired. But yeah, he showed up to his exam. He had been drinking the night before. He drove he drank the night before with his buddies. He went to his recertification and they're like, oh, he's going to be great. Let's just bring him up. And he blew into the machine and it blew above a 0.08 and he was reprimanded. He's the only one. So my trial, my case got dismissed because he lost his job. But he's the only one that actually did it right. So my point is very few officers do this exam correctly. It is very precise. These are very precise examinations. So precise, like, do you remember in high school when you took your SAT or your ACT or any of your standardized tests, how the proctors in your exam were like, you know, okay, it is exactly 8 o'clock. Okay, please flip over your paper, right? And you have 10 seconds to write your name and fill in the bubbles. And all of y'all with long last names were like, I can't do that in 10 seconds, right? And you were just freaking, like, these are very precise things. And your lawyer will go over this with you. But field sobriety tests are conducted of 3 parts, right? So there is the eye exam. Okay, there's the walk and turn. So you're going to walk down a certain number of steps and you're going to do a series of small steps and turn around and then walk back. And then there's the one leg stand where you hold your leg out for a little bit. Sorry, I shook the camera. You hold your leg out for a certain number of seconds and then you put it down. And I'm not going into all the details because this is a quick video. And again, I don't want to get too specific because there's other things I want to talk about. So, yeah, so these are the 3 tests that they do. Officers have to do each of them precisely. They have to show, so specifically on the walk and turn and the one leg stand, they have to show them in their complete form for you to be able to mimic. So think about, like, you have to see how it's done in its entirety before you copy it. They can't do like a few steps and then say, okay, so you do that and you do like 9 steps and then you turn, 10 steps and then you turn. Like, they have to do the whole thing for you. Okay, so it's a whole thing. There's lots of, but my point is also think about what an officer is wearing, right? You are potentially, you know, like in your regular clothes. Some people get arrested like in like, you know, they were going on a hot date and so they look really good clothes. Some people are like, they went out to a friend's house and they're like in their lounging clothes. Some people are, just in whatever, right? What is an officer wearing? Because an officer is like out in the field and he doesn't know what's going to happen, right? So he's got on like his officer vest, his bulletproof vest, right? So he's got a nice layer on his center core area that's providing stability, right? Okay. So yeah, so when he's doing his one leg stand, he's got some support at his core area. So it's a little easier for him. So when he's doing his example, like it's a little, and he's done it lots of times, right? So like, you remember the first time you did a push-up, it was really hard. And then like the 50th time you did a push-up, I'm not saying like you did it, but it was a little easier. So yeah, they have practice. So they're going to be like, well, I did it and it was fantastic. I have no problem doing this. Why can't you do it? Yeah, not to mention, so these field sobriety tests, I'm going to go on a slight tangent. When they were created, they were tested in California, and they were done with males, only men, who were athletes who were in their 20s. So yeah, like normal people can't do this. Like if you're going to take like college athletes and go and say like, oh yeah, normal people can do these tests. Well, no, I'm not okay. Y'all can't see me because I know I look fabulous on this YouTube video, but I am a whopping 5'1". Yeah, there are college athletes. They're not my height and they are not my size, and I am not a man. So these tests were not designed for me, and yet they are the standard. They are standardized field sobriety tests. There are variants. The tests should not be conducted on people who are over 65, okay, because they don't work. And the test should not be conducted for people who have just been in car accidents, for people who, there's some other things, who have other certain medical conditions, which is the other thing. So before you actually start these tests, there are some screening questions. Even on the eye test, the officer should ask you several screening questions. What is your age? Do you wear contacts? Have you been in a car accident? Have you had any major surgeries? There are, and some other health issues to kind of screen, are you a good candidate for these tests? If he doesn't ask you these questions, he is not performing these field sobriety tests to the standard that is required for them to be standardized. Okay, so just food for thought. Okay, so let's assume you didn't know you could refuse these field sobriety tests, okay? Because you can always refuse them. You can be like, oh, so like you didn't know, you're getting out to the car because you're complying because he has the guns, right? And you get to the back of the car and he's like, hey, could you stand like this? And you realize, oh, this is those field sobriety tests I've heard so much about. You can tell the officer, hey, I really don't, I don't want to do these. I don't feel comfortable doing these, right? And he's going to give you something that's like, oh, well, if you weren't drinking, you could do them, right? And you weren't drinking, so why don't you just do them? He's going to, kind of be a jerk about it. And I'm assuming maybe they'll be very polite. I don't know. Let's hope that they are. So you just say like, hey, I just don't feel comfortable. Again, always polite with the officer. Yes, sir. No, sir. Always polite. Or ma'am, because, you could have a female officer. You don't want to do field sobriety tests, okay? So they're going to be like, okay, well, do you want to give a breath or a blood sample? Okay. You always have a right, again, to refuse breath or blood samples. Okay. They're going to be like, it doesn't matter. I'm going to get a warrant for it anyways. Okay. And that's when you'd be like, you go right ahead and do that, sir. Thank you. I appreciate that you want my bodily substances that bad. Okay. You don't have to be that sarcastic. Like I am a little bit because I do this a lot, but you can be like, okay, you have your job to do. I understand, whatever. Here's what's going to happen when you do that. Okay. If you think they're going to let you sit back in your car while you wait for that warrant, you are wrong. You're going to go and sit and wait in their car. Okay. Because they are investigating their case. They are waiting and they don't want you to go away because now they want your bodily substance. They want your breath or they want your blood. So you are going to go and have a seat in the back of their patrol car, okay, while they do what they need to do. And they are going to read you this form. It's a DIC 23 and a DIC 24. Names and numbers don't matter for these purposes, but long story short is it's a long form, and at the end of it, it's the legal form, and it's going to say, at the end of this, I am asking you for a sample of your breath or your blood. Okay. So we've already talked about how, number one, would you like to, they're not going to ask you, do you want to do field sobriety tests? But when you get out of the car and they are saying, hey, would you please stand like this? Or would you hold when they get their little pen out and say, follow my pen, that's when you're going to say, hey, wait, officer, I don't want to do your tests. Okay. And so when they take you and they're asking you, would you like to give a sample of your breath or blood? Hey, officer, I don't want you to take my breath or blood, please. Okay. This is when they're going to say, if you don't give a sample of your breath or blood, your license is going to get suspended. We're going to take it away from you, and your license is going to get suspended for 180 days. Okay. At a minimum. And you are very politely going to say, I understand. Thank you, officer. Please do it. Okay. Why are you going to say this? Because you are going to say, I would rather have my license suspended than have further evidence potentially against me, or you're just going to keep your mouth shut, right? And you're just going to be like, I understand. I understand my rights. I understand my license is going to be taken, away from me. I don't want to give a sample. And you're doing this because you know your rights and you want to give your attorney the best case to defend you. Okay. So yeah, that's what you want to do. Okay. So in the cop car, there are cameras. There are cameras. So when the officer has you in the cop car, right? What's he doing? Because he's going to go up front. He's going to run your license. He's going to go back to your car, right? And he's going to get your belongings, right? Because if you're alone, they're going to have to tow your vehicle. So he's got to inventory your car and make sure, that you don't say he stole anything or whatever, and stuff like that. What else is he doing? He's also going to, because at this point, right, if you've refused all these things, right, and he suspects that you have been driving under the influence of alcohol, let's just be real about it. You're going to jail. That's what's happening. You are going to jail. You've made his job hard, which is good. Like, it's his job. You're not supposed to make it easy. And he now has the right to kind of go into your car and secure it because it's going to be towed. Okay. So he can go in there and he can do certain things. Okay. So let's back up a little bit, right? I told you I was going to talk to you about searches of cars. Okay. So now we've talked about field sobriety testing and all this stuff. Let's go way back to the beginning of this when we're talking about officer interactions on traffic stops. Okay. So let's just say you have a traffic stop incident and, you have not had any alcohol or you haven't had any substances in your system. Okay. But let's just say you have a diabetic father at home. Okay. Actually, we'll just use my dad. My dad has, he has heart attacks and he has nitrous. So he has like blue nitrous pills, not nitrous. He has whatever it is that you take for in case he has a heart attack, the little teeny tiny blue pills. And so my mom and I keep him on our keychain in case he ever has an episode at the, at a restaurant or anything so anyways, long story short, if my car were searched, right, I have these pills in my car that aren't for me. And we're going to get to that in a second because this talks about dangerous drugs and stuff. So, but I haven't had anything. I'm driving. Officer, I have a broken taillight, which I probably do right now. Or anyways. So I'm driving down the street. Officer pulls me over. He wants to search my car, but there's no reason to search it. Okay. This is how easy it is to turn a perfectly legal traffic interaction into a DWI interaction. Okay. This is one of those mind blow moments. So if you need to ask questions in the chat, feel free. what does an officer do? An officer in this day and age, because remember, offense reports are paper, videos are interactions, like they're videos, right? They're not 4-dimensional. My point is, all an officer has to say in his report or articulate in his body camera is, I smelled the odor of marijuana. That's all he has to say. He doesn't have to have any observable evidence. He doesn't have to see residue. He doesn't have to see papers. He doesn't have to see paraphernalia. He just has to say, I smell the odor of marijuana coming from her car. I didn't see bloodshot eyes I just smelled it. And that gives him probable cause to search the entire vehicle. He can pull you out. And now he has a DWI investigation, because if the car smells like marijuana, well, that means at some point the driver of the car was smoking marijuana, or somebody in the car was smoking marijuana. And not only can he search the car, he can search the car and all of the contents, because marijuana is teeny tiny, right? So, I mean, there are exceptions to this, like there are limitations on it, but as a very broad general view, this is kind of what happens. And this happens every day. Do I think that all officers do this? No, I don't. But does it happen more often than not? You betcha. Every day, like very commonly. It is what it is. And this is why I say officers' jobs are to enforce the laws of the state of Texas. Now, it's the district attorney's job to kind of determine, is that case legitimate? Because the district attorney can say, hey, officer, I don't think that's right. I don't like what happened here. I'm not going to take that charge. And they can dismiss it, right? So different people have different functions. So I am just saying, like, if that is your case, your attorney will know, your attorney will have experience with that. Like, but I'm just letting you know, it does happen. So attorneys, if your client does come in saying that, and you're a newbie attorney or you haven't seen it before, it does happen. And moms and dads, if you're watching this and you didn't believe your kid, like, no, it absolutely happens. So just letting you know that. Okay. Moving on. Cop cars have cameras. Fast forwarding back. Cop cars have cameras. So if you are sitting in the back of your car, or let's say you were sitting in the car and you and your friends were all out at the bar and there's all of you, right? They should have different units that take and interview each of you away. But sometimes there's a lot of people and a lot of cops that are out, so they will all stick you in the back of the car. Anything you say in the back of your car to your friends is all on camera. So like if y'all are all in the back being like, oh, hey, don't worry about the weed, I stuck it in my jacket pocket. Like, that's on camera. And what's really bad about that is that if that weed gets to the police station and then they find it at the police, that's an additional charge. And that's a super serious charge, because now you're going to be charged with possession of a drug at an institutional facility, which is really bad. Okay. I'm also not saying like get rid of the drugs in the car or outside of the car to avoid a crime. Let's be very clear on this. If you are caught, you are caught, let your attorney deal with it, right? Plus, like, right now, Fort Bend County at least is letting go low, like they have POM diversion programs and stuff like that. So you're going to be okay. Let your attorney do their job. Do not try to hide, do not try to secret, do not try to throw out or destroy evidence, because that's what that is. Okay. Searching your car. Okay. So you've now been arrested. I shouldn't sound excited about that, but it's okay. Because remember, you got arrested. That's a good thing. You did everything right. Okay. You've been arrested. What does that mean? You've been arrested. You're going to go to jail. You're going to bond out. You're going to get a court date. What do you do now? Okay. You have 14 days. Like, clock is running. You have 14 days. You need to get an ALR. You need to get an ALR hearing. You need to get as much evidence. You need to go hire an attorney. You need to get an ALR hearing, depending upon what happened with your driver's license. If it was suspended, if it wasn't suspended, what you did, what you didn't do. But you have 14 days to get an ALR hearing. Okay. After that, you kind of missed the window. So basically, if you did blow, you might be able to get your license potentially back. It's you need an ALR attorney. It's kind of the whole thing. Okay. There's certain things you can do. But yeah, you need an ALR. You need to do it within 14 days. Okay. The other things that you need to do. So when you get arrested, everybody's like, oh, I didn't get Mirandized. Let's talk a little bit about Miranda. You only need, Miranda only applies if you're being interrogated. So if they're like, hey, I know you were drinking, what'd you drink? Like after you're arrested, or like other things like, with a DWI, for most times, Miranda may not apply. So a lot of people come in thinking like, well, they didn't Mirandize me when they arrested me. May or may not apply. Don't worry about it. Like, I shouldn't say don't worry about it. Let your attorney worry about it. But if you were not Mirandized, it is not necessarily a huge or a big deal. Okay. ALR is a big deal. Okay. In my mind, because it also gives you a first bite at the discovery, the evidence in your case, stuff like that. So attorneys, what do we charge? Like, how do you pick a good one? All of the things. I don't know. I know that sounds weird. I'm an attorney. There's a lot of different attorneys that charge a lot of different rates for a lot of different things. I think, first of all, it depends on what kind of DWI you have. We haven't talked about that. There's like a regular DWI, which is a class B. You have a blood alcohol content of a 0.08 or loss of normal use of your mental or physical faculties, which means you probably had a below a 0.08 class B. That's, I think, one level. You have a class A, which means you blew above a 0.08 DWI. It's not your first DWI. So you have a DWI with a prior. You have a DWI with a child in the car. That's a separate offense. There's intoxicated manslaughter. That's a different charge. You have, there's all different types of DWI intoxication offenses that I think would charge different rates. I will say that I personally charge more money for combination cases where it's DWI and another intoxicant, because I have to hire a toxicologist. Or I have to get a toxicologist expert. It just requires, in my opinion, more expertise to be able to do that. Alcohol is one thing. Like, I think most DWI lawyers know how to do that straight. But when you start combining intoxicants, it gets a little bit more complicated, because then you have to get into the pharmacokinetics of how the additional intoxicant absorbs or eliminates from the body. So if you have any questions, that's kind of, I guess that's a good time to kind of stop and open it up to questions. If anybody has any questions, if you want to ask openly or in the chat bar, I'm here.
Yes, we've got almost exactly 10 minutes, so that's perfect.
I tried to make it fit.
I asked everybody to unmute. You do have to, but if you have a question, feel free to ask.
I didn't want to say it was an excellent presentation. Thank you so much for, oh, we do have something in the chat, but thank you so much for giving the presentation. It's been really informative.
Yes, thank you. Can you read the question, Lisa, or do you need me to read it to you?
Sure, I can read it. It says, how do you file suppression motions, and do I ever do that? I do sometimes. I haven't done one recently on a motion to suppress. So it's kind of a tricky question, just because I tend to be a little bit skeptical. I will file motions to suppress. Most of my cases, I try to carry with trial, just because I don't want to give the state an opportunity to appeal. And I try to keep them kind of vague. I know that the DA's office did hire let me clarify. I know the Fort Bend DA's office did hire a new prosecutor who they're touting as being a really good expert or a really good person about DWIs. So this is what I would encourage. I would encourage to keep your motions to suppress relatively general and just argue them before the court in specificity. So I generally have carried mine with trial. And I think it also depends on when you're doing your motions to suppress, are you suppressing, I'm assuming the evidence of the stop? Are you suppressing the I guess, just generally speaking, I would just carry it with trial, but keep your motion general and specify on the record what it is that you're doing to suppress it. And then Benicia asked, what are the different consequences for getting a DWI when you have a license to carry? Okay. Oh, so this, yeah, we didn't talk about collateral consequences. Sorry. I didn't talk about any of that. So there are a lot of collateral consequences with DWI. There's actually a full website on it. So collateral consequences for license to carry, sometimes it will suspend the license entirely for a set amount of time. I want to say, I haven't looked it up in a long time, Benicia. I want to say it's like 5 years, 5 or 10 years. I'd have to look it up. I will follow up with you. Is that a good answer? But I do want to say I want to say it's like 5 years. I do know that having a DWI conviction basically prohibits you from anything in a medical career. Like you can't get a nursing license, you can't get an associate's. And it doesn't say like it's a true bar, but it basically says that it is, when you take your board examinations, like it will be seriously looked at, which I kind of feel is something that is just really like, it's just one of those things where like, if you have a student who is looking at it, it potentially is a big bar. And in those situations, I feel like that's where your defense attorney should go and seek remedies outside of the court of law and plead your case for an alternative remedy, which can happen. Like we haven't talked about that in the conversation, but there are alternative remedies that your defense attorney can seek besides trial or a plea. We haven't even talked about those options, but yeah, to kind of resolve a case. So Robert asked, have I been successful in getting a DWI reduced to a Class C? Yes, I have. If so, which Class C? Oh my gosh, Robert, that's very specific. I have to go back and look. What argument did I make to get the Class C? So when I got the Class C, it was one of those cases where I was talking about, I actually pled that it would affect their livelihood. So because of the collateral consequences, it affected the work or employment or future of the person that had the charge. So I think it was a college student that was going to be an engineer. And we talked about how we didn't want to limit their opportunities for that person going into the field. Because here's the problem with young people or very specific career paths is we don't know what's going to happen in the future, right? And so when you're pleading a case now, you have to think 20 and 30 years into the future, right? So if the DWI laws change, and they say, oh, well, we're going to make it stricter, like your person may be screwed, right? So where they had a plumbing license, in 2020, maybe in 2030, now they can't. And so those are arguments you have to make very specifically to the DA. I will say this, Robert, you want to call me? I will tell you like the kinds of packets that I have specifically worked up, what I've included in them to kind of assist you in how I have worked those up. I don't mind sharing that with you. That's easy. So yeah, give me a call. Legally Lisa, or 281 Law Lisa is my phone number. legallylisa@gmail.com is my email. Andrew said, we get this a lot at the law library, but some patrons who have an attorney want to know if they need to accompany their attorney to court. Do they need to, or is that something that is up to their attorney? Okay, so yeah, it's a big question too. We're in COVID right now. So I think if the attorney did an e-reset, the client does not have to go to court, but this is just my opinion. I'm a little weird. I also believe that this is the client's case and their livelihood. And unless your attorney has specifically said like, no, I absolutely never want to see you, I believe a client should be their own advocate and involved in their case to the extent they want to be. Now, asterisks on all of this, right? A client can be too involved. A client can sometimes interfere with the advocacy of the attorney. And so if the attorney has said like, hey, you are harming my effectiveness in negotiations or with the court or whatever, I think you need to listen to your attorney's advice. But yeah, if the attorney has done an e-reset and the client still wants to go to court, you know, to make sure their attorney is showing up or to see what's going on, that's fine. But that client also needs to know that maybe the attorney won't be there because they have filed an e-reset. I will say, I think in this pandemic, I think communication is key. It's difficult. A lot of us are solo practitioners or very small firms. And so I think that there needs to be a lot of grace and mercy on each side. And so I think that normally where you would expect a call within 24 hours, I think I think it's okay. And I know people might disagree with me on this. A couple of days is the extension now, is the expectation now. So, and I think multiple forms of options are okay. So if it's a phone call and you have to follow up with an email, you know, I think that's acceptable. I know that in normal times that you would be like, why aren't they getting back to me? I think right now it's okay. So yeah, I think I just wanted to say, hey, thank you so much. If y'all have any questions, reach out to me, attorneys or other people. I'm always here to help. Thank you so much, Andrew, for having me.
Thank you, Lisa. We appreciate your conversation, your wit, and your excellent explanation of everything. So thank you very much. And we'll talk to everybody soon.
Bye, y'all.